This has been an interview that's been difficult to prepare for because he's done and achieved so much. And I was watching Elon Musk's interview on Joe Rogan, and Joe Rogan was saying how he doesn't understand how one person can do so many things. And this is how I feel about this guy. So without further ado, if you can just give us a brief introduction and then we can crack on.
Yeah, hi guys. My name is Subaig Singh. I'm a Punjabi singer, and I'm well known as an ex MMA fighter, also a doctor. Done a few comedy skits in my time. Done a few different things, and yeah, I'm happy to be here and nice talking to you and sharing some of my life experiences. That's
amazing. So if we can start with that, I mean, like I have kind of one or two hats that I put on, not literally, but and I struggle to balance that. How do you do so much, and how do you kind of keep on top of this kind of stuff, all of the things that you're doing?
To be honest with you, I'm not sure. I just kind of do it. To be honest, I don't really think about it. It's not planned as such. Certainly, I think you've got to bear in mind that a lot of the things that I've done, they've been in different phases of my life. When I was doing my medical finals and I'm preparing for finals and I'm sat in the library for 6 months, I'm not doing any training or making any music. I'm just sat there, with my head in a book trying to pass these exams. I was in medical school, sort of between 2003 2008. That's one phase of life. Working life, then when I was doing MMA, that's another phase of life. I haven't competed in MMA now for about 10 years. That's when I was competing in MMA, and then I've done some other things after that. So it's fair to say I've done quite a fair few things, but I haven't necessarily done everything at once all the time, if that makes sense.
And how do you manage your time? Do you have a particular technique, or because even one of those things, even passing medicine, even training 3 times a day as you were doing 2 to 3 times a day, like even one of those lifestyles is challenging, to say that.
Yeah.
How did you kind of structure your day? Did you just get up and go, or was it kind of planned?
So which phase of life are you talking about? Are you referring now to when I was training in MMA, or like I said, it's broken,
right? Because there's probably class times and stuff, and you're probably so you got to be there for those class times, and then you've got the rest to figure out, like your rest and recovery and diet in between.
Yeah.
With like the medicine and stuff, that must have been full on, and so was that quite structured as well, or was that very self-orientated in terms of your?
So when I was I'll go back to when I was studying at university. From a young age, I've always been a sort of like a multitasker. Somebody who juggles a lot of balls. Even when I was at school, sixth form, I went to a school where sports were emphasized, music was emphasized, everything was structured and everything was timetabled. You'd have gaps in your day where you could do music, gaps in your day where you would do sports. So it was all kind of just inbuilt. So I guess I take that kind of mentality and took it forward. Whereas a lot of people, they stop living that way. I think most parents, they get their kids to do tabla, bajja, harmonium, karate class, swimming class, gymnastics class, and as on top of their studies. Probably, but in my case, I just carried that forward, that same kind of mentality. I pushed that forward through my schooling, and then when most people stop doing that kind of stuff when they go to university, I was still doing that kind of stuff. So I'd be doing my studies during the daytime, and then in the evenings, every night, I'd be out training, doing some Wing Chun or some Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or some wrestling or something like that. And then same, when I started work as a doctor. It's a very demanding rota. Sometimes I would do a night shift. Straight after the night shift, I'd be straight in the gym. I'd be doing some heavy sparring or something like that. So I think at the time I was very, very young, and I had a lot of energy, had a lot of testosterone. Recovery was less of an issue. It was just you were just running on adrenaline and running on hype and on testosterone and excitement. Back in those days, it was when I started training full time in MMA. I actually stopped being a doctor for a little while, and I was training full time. Then that was like a properly sort of structured training template. But then at that point, I was only doing MMA.
So with now, how do you manage your day? Do you kind of like have a to-do list that you start off with, or do you time block, or just kind of on the fly figure it out?
So in the current phase of life that I'm in, I'm basically I'm focusing on music. So Punjabi music, is an entertainment is my main thing at the minute. I still do spend a lot of time training. A lot of my days are unstructured. I do have structure to my training program, but yeah, I've got a timetable, and I try and get through. I've got a to-do list of all the different things I need to get through. So it might be, like, well, for example, today after I finished here, I'll be down to the gym. I'm going to do probably about 14 rounds of shadow boxing. Then I'll be hitting the gym. I'll be doing a strength and conditioning session. So with strength and conditioning, when you follow a linear periodized program, everything's kind of put in the program for you, and you just follow it.
And where do you get the drive from? Is it the kind of people you have surround yourself with, or is that something you've always had? Because all of these things require a lot of motivation and to get done, right? Like even with the 14 rounds of shadow boxing, that's something probably everyone could do, but very few people do, right?
Yeah. The motivation is there. The love is there. I'm one of these people that can only do things that I love, and that can only do things that they're motivated to do. Try and get me to do something which I'm totally unmotivated to do, and it's like pulling teeth. So with boxing and Thai boxing, which are the main kind of martial arts that I'm focusing on today, I see them as solo sports. It's almost like bhakti in a way, in the sense that you fully immerse yourself, and it's what you put in. That's the old school way. The new school way, there's a lot of pad work, a lot of training with people and stuff like that. The old school way, there's a lot of time spent doing rounds and rounds of shadow boxing, lots of time spent. If you look at the old Mike Tyson routines or Muhammad Ali routines, it probably did like 6 rounds of shadow boxing. Probably start with skipping, probably like 6 rounds of skipping, followed by about 10 rounds of shadow boxing, followed by 10 rounds on the bag, and at the beginning of the day, like a 10-mile jog, and finish with a 10-mile jog. That would be their normal day. It's very much a solo activity. So I'm somebody who definitely enjoys their own company. I'm not a particularly social animal, never have been. And I think that's something which has, it's a double-edged sword. It's nice to be social and have people around you, but I think you tend to get things done and have more focus in your life when you just realize that, look, we come here alone, and we're going to leave this place alone, and we're on our own, so in that respect, I've always managed to just focus on myself and focus on what I need to get done, and not get distracted.
So how, like, I was talking to my wife about this, about you, and she was saying it's very rare for somebody to be able to follow their passion as you have, right? Like you mentioned,
yeah,
you've been passionate about, but with most Indian families, if they said I'm a doctor and I want to do MMA, their family will probably beat them until they change their mind. So how like, and even with, I remember when I was younger and I wanted to do politics, and my mummy was like, oh yeah, you won't get a job doing that, don't waste your time. So how did you kind of get the courage to make that switch? Because that's a brave move to go from medicine to MMA, and then obviously you've switched again. So I wanted to talk about that in terms of reinventing yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to lie. It wasn't. I had issues in my family had concerns about it as well. But I think the fact that both my parents were from educated backgrounds themselves, I think my dad came to the UK when he was about 10. I think my mum came when she was about 12. So they'd been through the British education system. Although they were Punjabi, they were Indian. They were still westernized in that respect, and they wanted to give their kids a life that they never had themselves. So they wanted to have the best. So I think I was lucky in the sense that my parents, they came from an educated background. They wanted me to have a life which they weren't able to have themselves. So in that sense, they always pushed me to be an all-rounder. They pushed extracurricular activities. So it wasn't a surprise for them, to see me jumping in a ring and doing something different and doing something off the beaten track. I don't think I would have been able to do it had they not supported me. They had their concerns about it. They wanted me to be a professional. I think they would have probably preferred it if I'd just stuck on the safe path and just done that. But at the same time, my dad was a martial artist. I got my love for martial arts from my dad. He was a big Bruce Lee fan, so he was proud of me going in and having a bash. And my mum, she comes from a family of guys, who were fighters as well. So there's that pride there as well, which you can't run away from.
Okay, so before we get into the MMA, I want to go back to the medicine route, because that's probably a lot of first, second generation Indians. They inspire to do what you've done.
Yeah.
And how did you do it? Because the criteria, the entry requirements are so demanding. The lifestyle is so demanding. So many people fail before they even make it through the course. So
Yeah.
the attrition rate is huge. Even like there's a book called Why It Hurts or something. It's a. Have you read that one? It's
I'm not really.
it's hilarious. So I think it's a SHO who wrote it, but he writes about his life as a junior doctor and the stories he talks about, like the sleep deprivation. Just it gives you a real appreciation for doctors. And when people say, "Oh yeah, they're overpaid and they're greedy," when you read his book, it's just mind blowing in terms of the levels of exhaustion you guys experience, and then still have to perform at a high level and have to do make life or death decisions in some cases.
Yeah, so I really struggled with medicine and being a doctor, and still struggle to this day. It's never been my passion, I just about scraped through medical school and got through it. Wasn't very happy doing it, so I've never really been a fan of it. And I think one of the big contributing factors has been the culture of the profession itself. I think looking at it from the outside, people don't really understand. I think people understand it more, what it's like to work in the NHS as a body. But I think only people that work within it can really comment on what the culture is actually like. And it's not just the NHS. I think a lot of public sector jobs, jobs which are where you're employed by the government essentially. You're not there to make big bucks, and you're not going to make big bucks. So I think some people, they think that being a doctor, it's a big status symbol, something to wear as a badge, like having a car and having a big house, and it's essentially a status symbol, and it's a very costly and expensive status symbol. So that's certainly the wrong reasons for doing it. I think the right reasons to do it is if you've got an extreme passion for it. And that's it. I think if you have a passion to be a doctor, then I think you should go for it. If you don't, and you think, oh, I'm going to make money, or I'm going to have a big status and things like that, I think you're going to quickly get found out, and you'll be quickly exposed. So
it's difficult because we're expected at 16 to, if you're going to study medicine, to gear your whole life towards something that you have experience of. Like it's not like you've done work experience as a doctor, but you have to you have to plan your whole life around the courses you take, the curricular activities, all of that kind of stuff. And then he actually the book's called This Is Going to Hurt. It's a bestseller by Adam Kay, and he actually gave up medicine. So that was the book. He quit. But yeah, so if somebody is really passionate about it, any words of advice for young aspiring doctors? I appreciate that. Just going for the title and the clout isn't going to be good enough.
It's not going to be good enough. That's my view on it. Maybe some people can do that. For somebody like me, who's very kind of emotional and is driven by passion, for somebody like me, I quickly found out that this wasn't really the profession for me. Even though I still practice, to this day. It's not. It's never been something which I've been super passionate about. In terms of advice, I would just say, you need to reflect deeply on what you want in life, and what your passions are, and try and gain as much experience of the profession before you make that step, through work experience, through doing research, through reading books, and make sure you go in there with your eyes wide open. Being a doctor is no different to becoming a policeman, or something like that. Being, working in the police, it's not for everyone. Being a doctor is not for everyone. People who join the police, for example, they're going to take a massive pay cut. They're going to be dealing with some horrible people, seeing some horrible stuff, and they're probably going to be in a sometimes not the best cultural environment to be in, as a workspace as well. So the only thing which is going to keep them driving is a sense of purpose, a sense of mission. And I think that's the only thing which is going to see you through in that profession. I see medicine in the same way. So you need to identify what your purpose is in life, what your mission is, and what's going to drive you through the hard parts.
That makes sense. With the NHS, did you suffer any like racism or kind of did you get treated differently because of the way you look?
No.
Patients?
No, never. I was always I never really encountered that directly. Obviously, I've had conflicts at work with colleagues. You know, I've had conflicts with patients and things like that. But nothing that I can pin on to do with race. You know, obviously, you don't know what's going on in people's minds. People are racist. Racism does exist. You know, in this day and age, you get into a lot of trouble if you make a racist comment. So, you know, if people are racist, you know, they're probably going to be thinking it in their minds as opposed to letting it out loud.
Yeah, because you work in A&E, right? Which is probably, you know, the most intense.
Yeah.
Is probably the most intense environment you could work in. You're seeing a lot
of
you know, high or, you know, sickle cell patients who are, you know, suffering, and then you got, you know, alcohol, and so there's a lot of you're probably seeing the extremes of stuff. So you'd probably get it if anybody. With MMA, how did you that you were the pioneer, right? So when I was telling you before we went on hit record that I know you from MMA, I used to watch your fights on YouTube. You used to remind me of TOTs. You just like smash people and then just pound on them, and just I don't know, you took a step back in your fights. Old Thai style of just going forward. So like when I got into Sikhi, there were a lot of things who were reluctant to train because they were like, oh, we don't want to, you know, I don't know, they don't want to go into environments where they're kind of the only person of an ethnic minority, or you know, they get roughed up and that kind of stuff. So, you know, you're the first, as far as I know, you're the first keshdari MMA fighter in the world, right? I don't know anybody before you.
It was a great honor to be able to do it. You know, a great honor. It was a great responsibility I had on my shoulders at the time. A lot of pressure, too much pressure, to be quite honest. Yeah, it was great to be part of it, and it was great to kind of to set off a movement, I guess, and see so many people, you know, who are much more talented than me, much better than me, you know, take the reins and to run with it. You know, and to see so many people doing so well now, you know, so you know, I've, you know, it does give me a lot of fulfillment and happiness and pride to have been part of that.
To go from the MMA to music, and you're smashing it with the music, you've got so many views. Like, how did you make that transition? What was that like? Was that scary to kind of change profession? And then obviously it's very different, isn't it? Like being an MMA fighter to a singer. Like, how was that journey?
Yeah, again, totally unplanned journey. I've been performing from a very young age. You know, I used to sing when I was at school, learned tabla harmonium when I was young. So I've always had it in me to sing. I've always loved performing. Any chance I could be in a play, or, you know, get a small TV part or something like that, an acting role, or, you know, jump on a stage and sing. I used to take it at a band when I was at university. Never thought I would do it as a job or as a profession. You know, about 5-6 years after I finished doing MMA, I had a massive following on social media. So I had all these people that were engaging with me on social media, but I wasn't fighting anymore. So, you know, it was one of those things where you can either just, you know, I thought I've got this audience. What should I do? A cappella songs, some old Punjabi folk songs or something, and then sticking them up there. And I had a good response from that. And then Popsy the Music Machine, you know, famous, used to got in touch. You know, he saw my talent, was impressed by it, and wanted to work on a track. And the rest is history. You know, my mum and I got together. We set up our own record label called Harbir Records, and we just went for it. You know, I guess I'd had that third party endorsement. You know, there's a lot of kids out there who probably say, oh, you know, I want to be a singer, and parents don't take them seriously. But when you have somebody who's in the industry and says, no, he's pretty good, you know, let's do something. I think she thought, right, you know, we're going to go for it. And that's it. I've released about 20 songs now over the last 5 years or so.
I was listening to some yesterday, and the interview as well about the Brothers song that you and how does it feel when you're at somewhere and you hear your music being played?
Yeah, it's a nice feeling. Yeah, it's definitely a good feeling. I'm kind of used to it now, so the novelty's kind of worn off. Now it just feels like any other job, I guess. But it's definitely a nice feeling, you know, to get recognition for it. Definitely.
It's amazing.
Yeah, but as an industry, being it's very different to being an MMA fighter. MMA fighter is full of like manly guys, you know, like real men sort of thing. You know, the music industry is very snaky, you know, and it's very, very shady and very, very dodgy, and you know, can be very, very negative. You know, whereas in MMA there's still this kind of warrior code thing. You know, and there's that kind of mutual respect that you have. You don't get that in the music industry. It's literally you know, a free for all jungle.
Yeah, I find with people that train, I really like people who have like dogs and people who train, because I find there's certain characteristics that those kind of people have.
Yeah. Did you say people who have dogs?
Yeah, I think people who have dogs, they have certain characteristics.
Yeah.
So
What
that's
characteristics are these? I want to take some notes.
I agree with me. She's a psychologist, so
Yeah.
on that kind of snaky thing. Obviously, you must, having transitioned from the different industries that you've been in, like particularly MMA to music and stuff. You must have got a lot of hate, a lot of comments. You know, a lot of people saying stuff. How because this is mostly going to be by younger people, and that's a big issue now in terms of people molding themselves to what other people think they should be, and think they should do, and that's a big regret that people have at the end of life as well. There's a book written about it. So how did you overcome that? Because there must have been that hurdle of, you know, oh well, now he thinks he's a singer.
Yeah, it used to affect me, used to upset me, you know, in the first couple of months of doing music. And then after that, it just water off a duck's back. You know, one thing I've learned about the beauty of social media is that the block button is your friend, you know, and it's block and delete, block and delete. You know, I'm the kind of person who I wouldn't never say anything to somebody online that I wouldn't say to their face. You know, so I treat, you know, I took social media a bit too seriously, you know, like it's a real conversation with real people. But you know, the reality is that, you know, social media has just given everybody a platform and everybody a voice, which they at one point in history they never had. Yeah, it's very easy. Like I said, I just if there's something I don't like, I just delete and I block. There's somebody who I don't want to speak to because they're annoying, delete and block. If somebody's giving me hate, delete and block. You know, if somebody doesn't agree with my views, you know, and I haven't got time or I can't be bothered to debate it, delete and block. You know, so that's my approach.
I was listening to the kind of pre-fight interviews with Dustin Poirier and Conor McGregor, and Dustin Poirier put up on his wall. It's called "The Man in the Arena." It's written by an ex-US president, and it's all about the cynic. The cynic, you know, talks and says this person did this wrong, but he said the credit goes to the man in the arena because he's the one that actually took the step to put himself out there, and he might have lost, but that's the courageous person, the one who actually is doing the action, not the one who's sitting back talking about that person. And the other thing is with obviously the England game and all the hate that's come out with, you know, with the players that like Rashford and the players that miss the penalties. You know, look, these people are leaving these comments, wouldn't, like you said, wouldn't say these things to those people to their face, but you know, somehow social media has given everyone permission to act like a hard man and say, you know, all these things that really...
You know what it is, I'm very pro free speech, and to be honest with you, you know, I don't really mind people giving me negative feedback or swearing or whatever they want to say. You know, sometimes you need an enemy to insult you for the penny to drop, you know, and sometimes there might be somewhere in that load of rubbish they're spouting at you, there might be a diamond of truth in there, you know. So sometimes, you know, we have to be humble as well, and accept some kinds of criticism, even though it's not always presented in the best or most constructive form. But you have to try and sometimes look at what people are trying to say, you know, and things that people are saying badly. So I'm all for free speech. We're just living in a world now where there's just so much information coming at us from all different angles. The world is there's just information and narratives, information everywhere, and we just need to have like a filter mechanism to sift through it all and only pick up on what is relevant to us. And I think that's key in this day and age. Otherwise, it's a big overload. You know, and that's down to everything, whether that's narratives, political narratives, whether that's fake news, you know, whatever it is. You know, we almost need to be like a homing pigeon and like a laser guided missile through all this stuff that's going on.
Yeah, I think that's a topic or a territory that's really come about in the last 10 years or so with the social media. People need to have the ability to discern what's they've got to make their own decisions, right? Like when
There you go.
came about, people are probably just digesting it mindlessly, and now people are thinking, well, is that true, and questioning stuff. So I guess you got to do the same thing.
I mean, the thing is, you know, when I was competing and fighting, there are lots of people, well-meaning people, who would suggest this, suggest that, suggest this. Oh, maybe you should try this, maybe you should try that. And people would constantly want to give you advice, you know, often unsolicited advice. Sometimes it would be good, sometimes it'd be bad, sometimes it'd just be annoying. Same with music. You know, there are always people who want to give you suggestions, but why don't you try this, why don't you try that? Now you're doing this wrong, you got to do that. And you know, so I think with most things in life, I'll listen to it. I'll certainly hear them out and hear what they have to say, and then I'll sit down and reflect on it and see if it's relevant to me or not, or whether it works for me for me or not, and then decide whether, you know, where I'm going to take it.
I think that's
because otherwise, if you don't do that, you're in danger of just living in your own bubble, and you know, and then, you know, if you're kind of very narrow-minded and very fixed, and you don't take on board anything, that's also dangerous.
On a different note, our community loves to talk about diet, and I know when you're competing, you were vegetarian and you followed obviously a diet plan, and you've always been in shape from all of, you know, all the stuff I've seen you put out. I've never seen you let yourself go, really. But how did you manage nutrition? I think that's a big topic, particularly in like the vegetarian Amritari community, because they want to know how they can train but still get muscly without getting fat and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So, well, first of all, I'll say I definitely have been out of shape. It's just I'm very careful what I put on social media and on an Instagram, so I don't put any, you know, any fat stuff. You know, in the last, I would say in about a year ago, I was about 15 kgs overweight, and then I went on a keto diet and I lost it all. So now I am back to 70 kilograms, which is my MMA fighting weight. And you know, so I'm now on that weight for the first time in about 10 years. So, you know, lockdown's been a blessing in that sense, where I was really able to get my diet together and get back, you know, to a really lean, you know, a lean fighting weight, you know, to the extent where, you know, if I wanted to potentially make a comeback, you know, I could, because weight can be prohibitive if you're not at the right weight. You know, I have made the mistake of taking a Thai boxing fight a few years back, where I was a bit flabby and I took on a fight at 75 kilograms, and the guy who I fought was 75 kilograms of lean, ripped muscle, and I could just feel the strength difference when I was clinching with him. So, you know, if you're not at the right weight, it can be prohibitive as to whether you jump in the ring or not, and for a while it has been for me. So I definitely have been out of shape. When I was a vegetarian, and I was competing in MMA, back then I was kind of in my early to mid 20s. So, you know, I think a lot of people in their early to mid 20s can get away with eating things that they can't when they're in their mid 30s, like I am now. So I have always struggled throughout my life with nutrition, and I think a lot of vegetarians probably have. The only thing I'd say is I'm definitely not an expert when it comes to nutrition. I would say get expert advice on it. You know, that is the only solution, and don't, you know, listen to old wives' tales and stuff like that. I'd actually go to a professional to put together a nutrition plan for you.
That's terrific. Like I said, again, really appreciate your time, all the things that you've done. You've been a pioneer in the community, and it's just been it's been tremendous having you in the bunch, to be honest. Like the amount of stuff, the ways you've contributed, the way you've kind of set the path for a lot of kids coming up. Before you go, if there's a 12, 13-year-old listening to this and they're trying to find themselves, is there one piece of advice that you would give, or you could give, just off the top of your head?
To a 12, 13-year-old who is looking to find themselves?
Yeah. So any one piece of advice that you'd give to somebody like young? Very, very general.
Yeah, I know. See, you think you've asked a simple question there, but you've asked a very deep question and a very difficult question. One piece of advice that I could give to somebody: never give up. Yeah, never give up. Be persistent and just keep chipping away.
Lastly, where can people find out more about you? Where can they connect with you? Where can they access your music?
Yeah, so on Instagram, Subaig_Singh, Subaig Singh. You find me on Insta, you find me on Facebook, Subaig Singh Kandola. I've got a Facebook fan page as well. So if you just type my name in, you'll find me on most most platforms. I run all the pages myself, so if anybody wants to reach out and speak to me, you're more than welcome to drop me a message, and I will try my best to reply.